First of all, I want to thank all of you for the rare privilege you've given me of being among you for these few days. It's been quite an experience, a learning experience for me. And I thank you, John, for inviting me. It's been really wonderful. So now I want to give you my view, close view on science and human dignity as seen from space. And as you may have gathered, if you spend too much time working for NASA, you see everything from the point of view of being in space. And I've been involved in NASA space missions since the 70s, actually. And what I see now is very different than what I saw then. What I see now is a planet that is in serious crisis. I mentioned yesterday that you can see from space easily that the polar caps are shrinking. This is what they looked like back in 1980. The solid white is the permanent ice cap on the North Pole here. The lighter grayish white is the ice that comes and goes with the seasons. Compare that to what we see in this picture. It was taken 2 years ago in 2012. You see that the permanent cap is almost gone, and that seasonal ice, when it goes in the summer, now allows commercial shipping over the pole. The problem with this, it's like your driveway right now. Most of you everywhere are covered in ice. You know, when you manage to knock the ice off of one spot, the sunlight warms the concrete of the asphalt, and that causes the rest of the ice to start melting faster. That's what happens here. Once you expose the ocean, it absorbs more sunlight, causes the rest of the ice to melt faster, and the permanent ice that remains is getting thinner. And it's soon going to be gone, permanently gone, because once that happens, we don't have any way of bringing it back. This is a view from near-Earth orbit from the space station on Expedition 25. That's Cairo, all the bright lights there seen on the night side of the Earth. And yes, off to the right, that's the Holy Land. This illustrates the problem that generating the electricity for all those lights puts carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which you can easily measure. You might be able to see this faint orangish line above. That's the top of the atmosphere. It's actually dust to the top of the atmosphere reflecting sunlight. So you can see it like that. And so the carbon dioxide acts as a blanket, traps the heat, and the Earth becomes warmer. We look in ice cores, tree rings, and are able to actually measure the carbon dioxide in our atmosphere going back 800,000 years. 800,000 years. This is back to, there were barely creatures you could call human at that point. And you see the CO2 concentration goes up and down, up and down. It peaks just shy of 300 parts per million by volume. And we can also, the same way, track the temperature of the Earth going back that far, 800,000 years. And you see that in the natural cycles of the Earth, these are the ice ages and the warming periods between, that temperature and carbon dioxide concentration go hand in glove. It's always been that way. Now let's add on recent measurements of carbon dioxide concentration over the last decade or so. It's up to 400 parts per million against the highest it's ever been before, around 300. We've never seen this before. And if our rate of energy generation and CO2 production continues in current trends, "40 years from now, we're going to be seeing CO2 concentrations of double the highest it's ever been in history." And I'm here to say that you've heard about predictions and models and all that, but frankly, as a physical scientist, I don't believe them, because they're trying to model a situation that has never existed before, which we've never even been close to. We're seeing high temperatures incredibly high temperatures, record temperatures all over the world. 127 degrees. And we're seeing the consequences of warming, not in the future, but today. Massive storms with names like Sandy and Katrina. Yes, you hear, well, a scientist can't really prove that global warming is what causes these storms. What that means is that if I want to make a detailed climatic model that traces specific warming in certain spots to that particular storm on that day, that's incredibly complex, and we can't do that. Given another 10 years, we probably could. I don't have 10 years to wait. I'm a first principles physicist. What I say is, look it. The energy that feeds storms is the surface temperature of the ocean, the warmth of the ocean. On the day that Katrina, Sandy came ashore, the sea surface off the eastern seaboard was 9 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than normal. That drives a lot of extra energy into the storm, so any storm that formed was going to get big. And I think you all know that when the air is warmer, it holds more moisture, right? Yeah, think of your favorite southern town in the middle of summer. Yeah. So when the storm starts, it's got more water to pour down, and you have floods. And a consequence of those floods, massive floods all over the earth. You're hearing about these in the news every month. This is a result of warming. And because when it rains, it pours, the rest of the globe does not get rain, and areas that are normally dry are experiencing severe droughts. And that's one of the ironies of this whole warming business, that places that are dry get drier, places that are wet get wetter. And where it gets dry, we get fires, raging, out-of-control fires that are larger than any Forest Service has ever seen before. And the polar vortex, that's a consequence of warming too. Again, even though you hear on the news, scientists are debating minor points of is this a connection or not, because those detailed models haven't been built yet. But the polar vortex is really this. There's always cold air near the North Pole, right? Okay. And the jet stream here, this is the way the jet stream looked in November last year. The jet stream is what keeps that cold air up near the pole. Now, what drives the jet stream? It's the temperature difference between the normally warm equator and the normally cold pole that drives the air to move northward, and then the spinning of the globe turns it so it goes across the globe. Warming is happening faster at the poles than anywhere else. So the temperature difference between the equator and the poles is lessening. There's less energy to drive the jet stream. The jet stream is no longer strong enough to hold that cold air near the pole. And look at it. This is January 5th when we were all just freezing. And you can now see that the cold polar air is right here. So ironically, the global warming is also causing these ridiculously frigid temperatures we've been experiencing. The consequences for things that you and I think about every day are severe. Our ability to produce food throughout this planet is declining. Crop failures, droughts. Fresh water supplies worldwide are declining because the glaciers are no longer there. The groundwater is evaporating. And guess who's winning? The insects. Because the warm reproductive season for the insects is getting longer, and the little critters are having the time of their lives. They're now getting in many cases, 2 reproductive cycles instead of 1 every summer. And so the ash borers, the pine bark beetles are taking down our forests, and the mosquitoes, which is a huge concern for biologists here at Notre Dame, the mosquitoes that carry the parasites that transmit tropical diseases are really getting out of hand. Diseases that were heretofore confined to the tropics are invading the United States. And what about species on Earth? This fanciful cartoon reminds us about the famous asteroids killed the dinosaurs business. Well, it probably did. One of the largest mass extinctions as destruction of species of life on Earth occurred, many millennia ago when the asteroid came in and changed the climate. But what we don't realize is, although we think of that as having been an instantaneous event, it was instantaneous in geological time. It actually took tens of thousands of years for all that species destruction to occur. Today, as the polar bears represent, because of climate change, we are losing 12 species per day. And we are now in the middle of the largest mass extinction ever in the history of this planet, and it's occurring not on a scale of tens of thousands of years, but on a scale of tens of years. And who's going to be hurt the most? It's the people who are the most vulnerable. Last night, Cardinal Wall asked us to offer challenges. Well, this is my challenge. Everything that we care about as a church, the people throughout the world who are starving, who are dying from lack of fresh water, who are suffering through horrible diseases, they are the first to go because they have nothing to fall back on. And frankly, if this warming continues, I think all of those missions are going to fail because there isn't going to be anything you can do. We are challenging the carrying capacity of the planet. This is a really hard thing to say, but we are approaching the lifeboat problem. Small boat, too many people, not enough food, what are you going to do? And as you well know, many are now starting to talk about the need for global limits on population, driven honestly, not by any political ideology, but simply by the realization that we've got a lifeboat problem here. Our lifeboat, this planet, is losing its capacity to sustain all of us. Are we going to accept limits on population? I don't think anyone in this room wants that. What are the alternatives? People can accept a lower standard of living, but the people on the margin can't. So what are we going to do? The only possible solution is we have to increase the carrying capacity of our lifeboat, our planet Earth, and that's what we mean by sustainability. We have to find ways to live more efficiently in terms of energy, in terms of food, in terms of local sourcing of building materials. And ironically, everything we do for more sustainable living satisfies that call for reducing our material wealth, and it makes us better people because we live more in community, paying attention to what we're doing. It makes us better stewards of creation. I look at responses to these problems, and it's very interesting to me. In the science community worldwide, every National Academy of Science of every major nation in the world has issued a statement saying that, yes, the Earth is warming and it's caused by us humans, anthropogenic global warming. And surveys show that 97% of scientists fully affirm this. There's no question, despite what the news says, that we're in serious trouble. You see documents like this, United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and it lays out some of these problems very carefully. But I know how that sausage is made. I've been parts of panels like this, I've been parts of management studies like that, and the way they're made is very carefully. In order to get a scientific factoid into a report like that, it has to be validated by panels of scientists from all over. It has to be reproduced by other studies. It's argued and argued and argued over. You've got to have a really, really tight scientific story to get anything in there. And anything you've got that is preliminary, there's a little bit of controversy over whatever, it's not going to go in there. So what you see in these reports is a conservative minimum statement of the problem. And I know how the climate models are made. They model the average behavior. The average behavior is not what gets us. It's the excursions from average, the going over the tipping points. And that's what I'm talking about, and that's what I worry about. A perhaps better place to look is this document put together by, what should I say, a private group of scientists who just got together to do it and call themselves the Millennium Alliance for Humanity and the Biosphere. This is really unique because it's scientists, actually mostly biological scientists, because they're the ones who see the impacts the most, working together with, yes, social scientists to really understand how this climate change is affecting the people of this planet. And it's a short document. It's got great summaries of the various issues, what's happening, what can be done in general sense to try and mitigate them. I find it curious that the faith communities are not part of that conversation. However, back at the Vatican, they have solar panels. The Vatican has made a commitment to become the first carbon-neutral nation in the world. No net carbon dioxide emissions. But you know what? I didn't hear about this from anybody in the church. I actually heard about this from Al Gore. You yourselves, the USCCB, have put out documents decrying the problems of climate change, talking about how it impacts environmental justice. And we have the Catholic Coalition for Climate Change, which is putting out lesson plans and the St. Francis Pledge, but is not being heard very widely because it's barely alive. It's about to die from lack of money. So although there's been concern expressed within the church, it's really not being heard. Although there are some dioceses, individual dioceses, who have taken themselves to task to really do something about climate change, which is a wonderful thing. Public opinion. I'm not a social scientist. This is my vague rating of other people's data, but you look at the Pew Research Center polls of Americans and you ask, how many people think the earth is warming? Really think there's solid evidence the earth is warming? And yeah, 2/3 of the people think so. That's good. How many think the warming is caused by us? Only 44%. And if you don't think we did it, you don't have a responsibility to do anything. And then I think, yeah, what about that other poll about evolution? Do you think that humans and other living things have evolved over time? Well, now 60% of Americans say yes, 33% say no. That's better than it was a decade or two ago. But this I don't like because it's saying that vague fear of science, that subliminal reaction to the loud voices of the deniers and the fundamentalists is infecting a large part of our population. People don't really want to believe that scientists know what they're talking about. And it's a weird contradiction, right? We've been talking about society that's being overrun by scientism, that science is the only thing that proves anything, and at the same time, we scientists being accused of not knowing what we're talking about. But that's the life of a scientist today. All right, what are we going to do about it? Actions. The first thing, in my opinion, we need to do is erase those subliminal doubts. And I think it is required reading to look at these two books. On the right, Finding Darwin's God, a terrific book that I actually learned about in a seminar here at Notre Dame. Written by Ken Miller, a professor of biology at Boston U, right? Or is it Boston College? Pardon me? Brown, excuse me, you're right, it's Brown, absolutely. Ken Miller at Brown, biologist, a Catholic, author of some of the most widely used high school textbooks in biology. Well, he took it upon himself one day to pick up all of the arguments you hear from creationists about why evolution cannot be true, and then to simply walk up to a mainstream scientist in that field and say, what do you think of this? And he discovered in every case he got an instantaneous, oh yeah, here's why that's not true. We don't have the missing link fossils that show creatures crawling out of the ocean living on land. Oh no, biologists have such fossils. Have fish with little proto feet that used to be fins. We can't explain how something as complex as the human eye could ever evolve. I'm sorry, biologists have traced the evolution of the human eye from primitive eye spots in simple creatures that merely detect vaguely the presence of light, right on up through various species to the eyes we have today. These are not questions in the scientific community. And by reading this, or even just leafing through a few pages, I really hope you'll come to recognize that this vague fear of science is unwarranted. It's people purposely lying about what the science community knows. And on the left, Merchants of Doubt, written by two investigative journalists who looked very carefully into climate denial and discovered that there are three people, three credentialed scientists, who are purposely conducting a campaign of lies, paid by, you can guess who, to convince the public that climate change is not real, or at least not being caused by humans. And they are the same three people who try to convince us that acid rain is not real and try to convince us that tobacco does not cause cancer using the same methods. Oh, scientists haven't proved that smoking really causes cancer because you can't prove that if Aunt Tilly gets cancer, that cigarette she smoked 25 years ago caused the cancer. But they fail to say things like, yeah, but statistically, if you smoke, you're going to get cancer. And if you warm the planet, you're going to have severe effects. There's no getting away from that. And these are the books. They're hard to read because when you begin to realize the level of purposeful lies that are going on, it's just mind-boggling. But once you read this, you will not have any doubts that evolution is real, and even more importantly, climate change is real. The second thing we need to do is take actions. Shouldn't there be in every church building in the world recycling bins? Shouldn't we change all the light bulbs? And besides, aside from the climate issues, changing the light bulbs is going to save money in the long haul, right? Shouldn't we lead by example? If the Vatican can install solar panels, why can't we make every new church construction LEED certified? Which means not only sustainable, not only in use of energy, but in use of water, in terms of air quality, in terms of building materials, in terms of every possible aspect of that building. It's a way of saying to our parishioners and everyone that drives by, hey, this is important. This is really important. And can we not pray about it? Shouldn't we have in every reading of intercessions a prayer for the earth and a prayer for our fortitude and wisdom to care for creation as we are instructed to do? And finally, let me say this. It's clear that while all the individual actions and local actions are incredibly important, the most important thing is to create a global mindset that this is important. And I don't think the governments around the globe are going to do it. When is the last time you remember the governments around the world agreeing on anything? But can we not, as a church, mobilize the work? Because it keeps occurring to me that, you know what, I think the Catholic Church may be the only organization in the world that has enough fingers everywhere to make the kind of difference that's needed. And what percentage of the global population is Catholic? 20% or something like that? Does anybody else, any other organization, claim the attention of that many people on the globe? I don't think so. So if the church could lead by example, a lot of the world would follow, and I think things would begin to change. And as a bonus, it would bring unity. It'll heal these rifts between science and faith. Because really, every scientist on this planet is desperately concerned about climate change, whether or not they're doing anything. If they see the church standing up for this, that's going to make a huge difference. And we were talking about the need to evangelize. Who are the people that are walking away from the church? The young folks? The liberals? The ones who care the most about the planet? What might happen if they saw that the church was taking on preservation of this lifeboat? This place, which I said yesterday, is the only place in the universe in which we know there is life. And I've been professionally looking for life elsewhere for 4 decades. We have no evidence, no concrete evidence of any sort that there is life anywhere else. And we're losing it. 12 forms of life per day. Can any activity we undertake be more important? Let's see the science community and this faith community come together to rescue the population on our lifeboat. Thank you.
So friends, it's 12 o'clock. We don't have time for Q&A because lunch is ready on the one hand, and on the other hand, for those of you who need to take the shuttle to the airport for a 1:30 flight, that shuttle is already here, right? Yeah, it's in front of the Morris Inn. So friends, I'm going to say, let's thank our speakers again for this session. We can continue informally. I would also like, at the end of the conference, to thank Brian Chappell, who's been with us organizing, to thank Betsy Carnes, who I'm not sure is here anymore, but you've interacted with her, and also to thank Valerie. Is Valerie here? Valerie McCants. It happens to be her birthday today, too. She's not here anyway. Huh? There are evaluation forms found in your packet, yeah. So if you could fill those out and leave them or send them back. You can leave them in a box there, or you can send them back. Thanks, everybody.